Live stream really is live, works well.
Yeah.
The lighting. This is what I call monster lighting.
Yeah, this is not ideal.
Anyway, it's okay. I think we had a little monster lighting yesterday. One eye is very bright, one eye is dark, you know.
I don't know if this would...
It had special effects to Hare Krishna. We had special effects to the... I'm out of my beautiful studio, everyone. You're just going to have to go with the flow of lighting, how it works, you know. I'm so conscious of lighting now because of this. And I'll have to travel with my own lighting. So, Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. So, a couple classes ago I was saying that these classes that I'm giving about low self-esteem are within the context, or trying to be within the context of Krishna consciousness. And not really like clinical psychology, although somehow or other I think I was a psychologist in my last life because I kind of understand these things. And in one class I was telling devotees, well, if you really have, you know, serious difficulty with low self-esteem, you need professional help. And a devotee yesterday, when we asked, Sukumari said, well, what can you talk about? Or I asked devotees, what would you like me to talk about? And she said, well, her situation is a little bit like that. It's very difficult, so how to deal with it. And one of the things that happens to many people is that low self-esteem can lead to depression, and that's when it's serious, or it can lead to dysfunction. And even if the dysfunction is material, it affects your spiritual life, and that's one of the... And it can affect it in different ways. So one of the prominent ways, and I think we talked about this before, is in relationships. And we tend to become critical because we need people's approval, and they don't approve us. What to speak of criticize us, then we criticize them, because we're not in a healthy state. So we, you know, in a healthy state, you can be criticized and you can deal with it, right? You're just, okay, I did something wrong. All right, I accept that. I'm sorry. But in a state of low self-esteem, it's really hard to be criticized because you need love, and you know, we all know. Sometimes we need affection, and we get the whip. And it's not easy, right? So, so that's one area in which having low self-esteem affects our Krishna consciousness. Another area, when it's serious, is that there's a sense of giving up, that I'm no good, so why try? You know, everything I do fails, that kind of thing. And you know, so let's say, you know, you're not doing well in Krishna consciousness, and you already have low self-esteem, and you put two and two together, and then you come up with a formula which is called just quit, basically, right? But what's the use? And I don't care anyway. And that was how we began this series, was talking about this concept, I don't care, because if you don't care about yourself, who does? And I can care about you, but you have to care about yourself. I can only encourage you to care. Prabhupada can only encourage us to care, but we have to care about ourselves. So that's another area. But another interesting area, which is more serious, is that low self-esteem is sometimes, when it is serious, it borderlines depression. And depression is a preliminary stage to suicide. That's what often comes next after depression, depending on the kind of depression you have, the situation you're in. So I said, those who are watching this class, I'm not a certified psychologist, at least not in this lifetime, although I think a lot of what we talked about is extremely valuable and relevant to devotees. But when you're in a situation where low self-esteem has become a dysfunction, it's probably connected with other dysfunctions. And I've seen personally in myself, for many people it's paralyzing. They can't function normally. And as we said yesterday, what I've also seen is people in that situation, because they can't function normally, they become overly dependent on other people to function normally. And the problem is that gradually they have no friends because they're like leeching from everyone. They're so unstable, they need other people for stability, and they drain people, and they take so much time from people, and people help them. And then the next day they need help again. And the next day they need help, and they make you feel guilty if you don't help them. And when it comes to that level, that's when I think these courses may be insufficient, where more help is necessary. So I don't think most of you are in this situation, but if you are, I know it's hard for some of you, because sometimes when I tell devotees they need this kind of help, especially those who have low self-esteem, they take it like you just told them they're crazy or there's something wrong with them. When obviously there is, and they even know there is, but when I say it, they get offended. So that's a problem, you know. It's like the person who's got heart disease, who eats butter and eats a chunk of butter every day. I had a friend who used to eat what do you call those? You call those things of butter? Sticks of butter. He used to eat a stick of butter. So imagine a heart patient eating a stick of butter, and then you're trying to tell him it's not good for him, and he doesn't want to listen. So those kinds of things become problems. And usually those who have the most severe problems usually had the most severe trouble when they're growing up, because they had parents who were basically pretty dysfunctional, or I don't know. Dysfunctional it's kind of a general word which could accommodate any problem. By dysfunction I mean that didn't know how to show affection or care. And then people who grow up without affection or care, then they begin thinking that I'm not valuable or I'm unlovable, and they can even start damaging themselves unconsciously, just in the way they deal with people. It always works against them. So those are signs of a situation in which, well, at least one should consider getting regular help to work their way out of it. I think a lot of us could work our way out of it just by this is like my 17th class in this series. By discussing this, I think a lot of us can work our way out of it. And my experience is that if problems are not too severe, you can work your way out of them by understanding the problem and understanding the solution. But when they get more severe, what's happened is you've become programmed to think in a certain way, and often just understanding intellectually doesn't reprogram you. And so you have a program like, I'm worthless, useless, my life doesn't matter, nobody likes me, etc. And that program is pretty strong. And if you understand something, if you understand, all you're basically doing is putting knowledge on above a program, but the program has to change. So that's why a lot of times when we're dealing with difficulty, and we hear and we learn and things don't change, is because it's like something's wrong with your car. So you just get some grease and pour grease all over it. Rub grease all over your engine. That's not really going to help. I mean, it might help something, but there's a fundamental problem with the engine you have to, fix. A piston is broken or something. So just rubbing oil on it, or grease, isn't going to be the solution. So sometimes that's why knowledge doesn't work, because there's a foundational belief system that's been developed at a very early age that's now working against you, and you have to change it. So that's why, if after listening to all these courses, classes we've been giving, you still feel like the problem is fundamentally existing. That's because of a belief or a number of beliefs about your unworthiness or lack of whatever as a person that is kind of guiding you, your self-identity, and then creating negativity. Now, interestingly, I don't know, it's interesting to me, before class, I'd been reading some things online about low self-esteem and how it affects people. And this article said 78% of high school girls suffer from some degree of low self-esteem because of all the images that are thrown at them of what they're supposed to look at. And it's about 50% of boys, or a large percentage of boys also, because of images. So that kind of thing, you may have loving parents and this and that. So that kind of thing it's easier to overcome because you can understand, like 0.001% of the universe, at least on the Earth planet, and let's say on this planet, not the universe, has bodies like models have that you think you're supposed to have. So if you understand, 99.99999% of the girls don't look like those models, then it's like, okay, you can kind of accept your body as it is, and you'll be okay. And usually you do that when you get older and when you get married, and your husband doesn't care what you look like, you're fine. But if you've been raised in a violent situation, you've been abused, neglected, and so forth, that can go very deep into your belief system. So understanding these other things may not help. But interestingly, I was reading Bhagavatam, and I looked up the word depression just to see what the Bhagavatam says about depression. And because Sukumari was asking, well, what is a solution if the problem is severe? And I'm saying, well, go to a therapist. And a lot of devotees will say, well, I don't want to go to a non-devotee therapist, or I don't feel, I'd rather have a Krishna conscious solution. And so in some cases that's workable. Some cases it may not be if it's very severe. But so I looked up the word depression in the Bhagavatam, and I was thinking, there's probably not going to be any reference to depression in Bhagavatam. Because a lot of times when I look up these more modern terms, like self-love or self-esteem, like that, that's not there in Prabhupada's books. But we found, I didn't have time to research it, but we found delusion, lamentation, unhappiness, depression, sleeping too much, fear, laziness. Interesting, right? Those are symptoms of some psychological, emotional problems that are quite common. Quarrel, fatigue, chronic fatigue, hatred, right? Violence. So these all came in one section of the Bhagavatam describing the mode of ignorance. So that's interesting, because let me read you some things about the mode of goodness, just as a comparison. Sense control, mind control, tolerance, discrimination, doing one's prescribed duty, truthfulness, mercy, study of the past and future, satisfaction in any condition. Wow, that would solve the problem, wouldn't it? So, as a general panacea for psychological problems, we could say, and of course I realize that to say something's a general panacea may not apply to everyone in every situation, and everyone may not be able to take the medicine immediately, but I'll say it anyway, at least from the point of view of our philosophy, a general panacea to these problems of depression and low self-worth would be come to the mode of goodness. Because in the mode of goodness, you develop things like satisfaction, being satisfied with yourself. Satisfaction in any condition, that's a symptom of the mode of goodness. Satisfaction with whatever you have, that's the mode of goodness. Not lamenting, not hankering, that's the mode of goodness. And those are all, many of those things are symptoms of that show up when one has low self-esteem. Yes? So So that's Sukumari, that's one answer. Another answer, Sukumari was telling me about her specific situation was very difficult physically. She's gone through a lot of physical challenges and emotional challenges. So her solutions, so she was asking, how do I deal with this in my situation? Because of the situations I've gone through, it kind of naturally difficult situations, low self-esteem would be kind of natural in that situation, or just kind of helplessness. And when we go through difficulties or difficult situations, then there is a panacea for that. And again, it's easier said than done, and that's acceptance. Like, I don't want to be like this, but this is how I am. You know, I wish I had an IQ of like 230. Do they go that high? That would be good. And I wish I had a photographic memory. I think my IQ is like 135, not 235, so sorry, you know, I'm going to go home and cry now. And I don't have a photographic memory. You know, if I remember my name, I'm doing good. Name of my wife, my name and my daughter, yeah, I'm fine. You know, beyond that, I may not remember so much. So now I could lament, you know, or there's so many things about myself that I wish they weren't that way. And also existentially, about my life, about my situation, about my health, about my personality, my nature. I wish I wasn't so much like this, because it causes problems. I wish I was like that. I wish I was more assertive. I wish I was more decisive. I wish I was more passionate about what I do. But I'm not. It's not my nature. My nature is whatever. I've always been like that. You know, I wish I wasn't like that. So how do you deal with that? Well, you basically have two options. One, well, you have three. Well, maybe more than three. One is lamentation, and I wish I wasn't that way, which is quite common, right? That could lead into depression, and then you can wallow in depression, which could lead into suicidal tendencies, which could actually lead into suicide. So we don't want to go that route, obviously, and that's what's described here in mode of ignorance. Another option is acceptance. This is what I have. This is what Krishna's given me. And then utilize what I have. So you see, the problem is if I only have an IQ of 135, it's okay. It's not, you know, it's pretty good, right? It's not the best, but it's probably good or better than average, but I could lament. Well, you know, but so-and-so, he's at 165. Or my sister is at 145, so I feel stupid. And my father is at 185, and something's wrong with me genetically, you know. God doesn't love me. You know what I'm saying? So you can take it that way, or you can take it, well, this is what I have. These are the skills I have, this is the intelligence I have, this is the memory I have. I don't have a good memory, so what do? I take really good notes. And I'm really organized, and I can access those notes in a second on my phone. I have little index cards on my phone for all the things that I forget. So I just compensate that way. And rather than lament, I compensate, okay, this is what I have, and this is what I can do, and this is what I don't have, and this is what I can't do. So Sukumari was saying that she has limitations physically and in other ways, and I think most people in her situation would find it very difficult with those limitations. She's had a lot of physical problems that most people don't have, and it's like all we can say is this is. I mean, all you can do is like, this is what's happening, and what can I do? I can only accept that this is the way it is. Sometimes, for example, devotees have gotten very sick, and they can't do anything, and all they can do is read, and talk about Krishna, and write. And a lot of them realize that they neglected that, and it was actually good that they got sick, because now they're reading and writing. Of course, it's not good that you're sick for the rest of your life. Sometimes I think, well, I better read and chant properly every day, otherwise Krishna might get me in an accident or something, so I have to do it. Because, well, you weren't doing it, so now I'm forcing you to do it. And that happened to me, and I was on crutches for 2 months. I was like, okay, what could I do? I couldn't do anything. I couldn't curse the moon, curse Indra, curse the god of accidents. I'd have to say, okay, well, now that this happened, what do I do now? And I thought, okay, I can do things that I really have always wanted to do that I would have never done. But now, because all I can do is use my arms, I can't go anywhere, I can start studying and writing, and that's what I needed to do at that time. When all of you say, greet me and like that, I see it, but I don't want to acknowledge each of you as you come on, because then I would have to stop. But just know that I see you, and if you just ask me how I'm doing, the answer is I'm doing well. So acceptance is hugely important, and can often be extremely difficult depending on what it is we have to accept. And in regards to low self-esteem, for many people who are raised in a healthy way, who develop low self-esteem because of social pressure, then they get to this point where they start looking at themselves and comparing themselves, and they don't accept themselves as they compare themselves to like the top 0.000000000.1% of the world. And that's how it develops for many people. So I think we talked about this before, how Prabhupada was very accepting, and he would engage people according to what they do well. So some people will do one thing really well, and that was wash pots, and that's what they did. There are even devotees in ISKCON who are still washing pots after like 40 years, because they say that all I can do is wash pots. I'm not good at anything else, and they like to wash pots. And in a Western society, you would normally feel pretty low if after 40 years you haven't graduated beyond pot washing. But for them, they're okay. They've accepted that I'm a pot washer, and pot washing's fine. And I can go back to Godhead washing pots, and I like to wash pots. And, so it's like, that's a nice mentality, that you could actually be happy washing pots. Because for most people in our society, pot washer is like the bottom of the barrel. Garbage collector and pot washer. No, I like collecting garbage. I'll do that the rest of my life. That's not a Western mentality. But maybe that's all I can do is collect garbage. And I'm okay with it. No anxiety. I get my 20 rupees a day and get my 2 chapatis and a cup of dal, and I'm okay. All right, So there's a lot to be said about that, a lot to learn from that, of people who accept themselves. This is what, it's like, I'm in this body right now, right? And my body does certain things, right? Your body does certain things. Her body does certain things. His body does certain things. And there's certain things the body doesn't do. And there's certain things the mind does and the mind doesn't do. And there's certain nature you have and certain nature you don't have. So you, of course, can develop yourself. You can try to be better. But, there's limitations. This is, it's, I was just reading this book. I think I told you. I was staying in North Hollywood, and I was staying at a friend's house, and he had a book. And it was a book of, I think it was called Manage Yourself. And I'm going to China to do some courses which involve managing yourself for some companies. And I thought, well, let me read the book, see what is being said. And he made the point, I think I mentioned this yesterday, that you may know this, that often somebody's really good at something. And so they've been in the company a long time, and because they're good at something, they promote them to something they're not good at. And they assume that if you're good at this, they'll be good at that. And he was citing General Patton. General Patton's a famous general, American general from what, World War II, is it? One or two? One of those, or both. I'm not a history buff, but he's a well-known general, so obviously he won a lot of battles and was intelligent and so on. Or he was a well-known something, I guess general, yeah. And they wanted to elevate him to another level where he would be a certain leader. And the people above him said, he is the best follower we've ever had. He was like, in the line of command, he was following. And they said that nobody followed as well as him. And he said, but if you elevate him to be a step above and be in charge, he won't excel. It actually won't do well. So it was like we think, well, he excelled on this level, so he'll excel on the next level. So I thought that was so interesting because he is well known, at least in America, and he excelled on such a high level for what he was doing. He was quite famous for it. And it was noted that if you just knock him up a notch to the next level, he would be a bit dysfunctional in that position. He wouldn't be successful. Isn't that interesting? What's that?
He was World War II.
World War II. I thought that was so, we call it the Peter principle. I don't know who Peter was, but it was observed, that this principle was observed in the corporate world, that when you're really good at something, they knock you up, and then they put you in a position. And the Peter principle was you get elevated to a point where you're not qualified, but you're moving up the ladder to get put in an unqualified position because you were qualified for the position below. It was assumed you would be. And if we think that way, then we think, oh, what's wrong with you? You don't do this well. Like some of us, we're not computer people, or we're not electronics people, or we're not engineering people. So, but we're artists, or we're writers, or musicians, or, and so some of you can pick up you say, what instrument you play, and say, whatever instrument you put in front of me, give me a half hour and I can play it, right? It's not something you learn in music school. You just know how to do that. That's who you are. And others, if you put an instrument in front of you, you won't know what to do with it. I mean, we can give you a year and you still won't know what to do with it. So that's okay. You weren't created to do that, and you just accept that God has given me gifts. And so I see the body like a machine, and every machine, you don't expect a lawnmower to spray paint your house. If I come home and I see you lamenting, why are you lamenting? Oh, my lawnmower won't paint my house. You think that, well, what's wrong with you? So we're doing the same thing. Oh, I'm not good at this. Well, you're a lawnmower. You weren't made to be good at this, but somehow we think we're supposed to be good at everything. And then we lament for what we're not good at, So, my car doesn't plow the land. I'm taking it back, So it's like, no, Krishna gives you this body. Your body will do something. We are in Las Vegas. Surajit was asking. Surajit's in Mayapur. We're in Las Vegas, Surajit. He used to come to our classes, and he's missing me. I'll be back December 19th in Mayapur for maybe a month, 3 weeks or a month. I think we had talked about this a little bit. In traditional societies, your self-worth wasn't based on so much your occupation. Your occupation was more based on your family tradition. So, we are carpenters, we're potters, we're merchants, we're farmers, and And so you would go into that line of work, generally the line of your father, unless you showed some outstanding qualities in another area. And so there wasn't so much comparison and judging. Oh, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a farmer. My life is useless. We do find there has been a lot of suicides in India by farmers, not because they're lamenting that they're not engineers. They're having problems with their crops, and there was drought or something, and they couldn't provide for their families. So it wasn't a Varna situation. It was just, this is what I am. I'm a farmer, and I'm not able to provide for my family. So that's understandable. So acceptance. Okay, this is who I am. These are the qualities I have. These are the abilities I have. I can improve upon them, no doubt, but there are limitations. You have certain IQ. You have certain. You may not be the conductor of the London Philharmonic. You may not have the potential to be the conductor of the London Philharmonic Orchestra. You may have the potential to be the conductor of your high school band. Okay, and you can, take music courses, and do a degree in music, but you may never be as good as those rare conductors who conduct major orchestras around the world. And that's okay. You don't have to be. Especially for devotees, because our Krishna consciousness doesn't depend on our material qualifications. So for us to lament that we lack certain material qualifications is kind of like double entendre. It's like 2 times stupid, because number one, just materially speaking, we should accept who we are. Everyone should. And number 2, Krishna doesn't care. So it doesn't matter for you can go back to Godhead and not have a high IQ. You can go back to Godhead and not be able to sing on key. You can go back to Godhead and not even know how to read or write. So, we might be depressed or lack self-esteem because we feel deficient in some area, but it doesn't have any bearing on your devotional service. That's not going to be jeopardized by it. So that's kind of like 2 times stupid to not be accepting. Okay, I wish I could be better. I could serve Krishna better, but I can still become Krishna conscious, even though I can't serve in one capacity. I can serve in another, whatever it is. There was a story I've told before that when Prabhupada came to Los Angeles, the head pujari was on the altar when they were greeting the deities. And Prabhupada was right there and looking at the deities. So naturally it was a little concern, My Guru Maharaj is looking at the deities. What does he think? And she couldn't really tell. And naturally, because we tend to have guilty consciousnesses, we tend to have a guilty conscience, especially, when Prabhupada's looking at something you did, you naturally okay, I must have done a million things wrong because I'm a conditioned soul and he's a pure devotee, so he knows what pleases Krishna. And that afternoon, she got a message Prabhupada wanted to see her. And so she was thinking, oh no, what did I do wrong? So Prabhupada told her, he said, thank you. You're taking very nice care of the deities. Completely different from what she thought. He was really, really pleased. And he said, by this service, by this act of taking care of the deities so nicely, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Now, the thing that's interesting, if you understand a little bit about what was going on in ISKCON in those days, this was, I think it was 1975 or 1976. 1975 or 1976 was the height of book distribution. So it was like, in those days, if you weren't somewhat involved in book production or book distribution, it was kind of like, you're like, well, I hope you make it back to Godhead in some lifetime. And I just don't know how you're going to please Krishna unless you're on the front lines of book distribution. And it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't not that bad. That mood was there, for sure. If indirectly, because by emphasizing the importance of book distribution, even without de-emphasizing anything else, you did, because you didn't talk about anything else other than the importance of book distribution, so therefore it made everything else look like, kind of like, okay, these are for all the Hare Krishna retards who can't go on book distribution, we'll let you worship the deity. Yeah, you could cook, someday maybe you'll make the grade, you go out on book distribution, but you can cook, you can clean the temple, you can do deity worship, like second-class citizen. It wasn't verbalized, but indirectly, you kind of felt that. People felt that way, well, I'm not doing much, I'm just doing deity worship. So here was an example of someone who you could say had spiritual low self-esteem, feeling like my service is not that important. And Prabhupada comes and says, I'm so happy with what you're doing that you're going back to Godhead at this life. So we're just trying to make the point that it's not depending on how successful you are or the particular service you're doing, but depending on your attitude. So I will not allow you to have low self-esteem based on what you can do or cannot do for Krishna, because Krishna doesn't prevent anybody from being Krishna conscious based on their material abilities or inabilities, right? So it's illegal, you can't. Now, if you have bad experiences in childhood, then it's understandable. You would have low self-esteem because you were abused or mistreated, or your brother always made fun of you, or your father always said you're stupid, can't you do anything right? He may have only said it once, but once might have been enough to impress you like deeply, and you kind of feel useless and stupid. So that's understandable, but from the spiritual point of view, no. But the point is that whatever is the handicap, we accept it, and then we use what we have. It's like you have $1 million, and then you're lamenting. And I say, why are you lamenting? Because I don't have 5 million. Well, why do you live in this little one-bedroom studio? Because I don't have 5 million. I only have $1 million. That would be like, you would think, what have you been smoking? That doesn't make sense. But we're like that also, isn't it? Why are you lamenting? Because I'm not a good artist. Yeah, but you're like this amazing musician. Yeah, I know, but I'm not a good artist. And he's a good artist. And it makes me feel like there's something wrong with me. It's exactly like that. There's something wrong with me. I only have $1 million. There's something wrong with me. He has 5 million. There are actually people who think like that. Although we think that would be strange, but people think that way. So it's the same with us. So Sukumari has a question. What if it affects your sadhana, including japa? So what if your situation, either physical or emotional or psychological, affects your japa? I've seen some of our devotees in physically handicapped conditions or even mentally handicapped conditions, and if that's the case, you're going to have to adjust. And you're going to have to accept that for me in my situation, this is what I'm going to have to do. Occasionally we find devotees who are going through severe health challenges, having to sleep a lot and so forth. And they can't maintain a decent level of sadhana, so they have to accept that and work from there, try to improve. And I would suggest visualizing a healthier condition, or visualizing a mentally healthy condition, but at the same time accepting Krishna, whatever you want, I accept, but I'm expecting your mercy. This very interesting concept of expecting mercy, praying. Should I pray for mercy? Should I expect mercy? And sometimes it's more powerful to expect mercy than to pray for it, because praying kind of indicates, I don't know, Krishna, if you're going to give it, where expecting means that I have faith. So, at least Sukumari, for you, I would say just have faith that, do what you can do, and have faith that Krishna is that whatever's happening is supposed to happen the way it's happening. And then maintain your sincerity and don't give up. And accept, whatever suffering is you have to accept, just accept it as somehow or other it has its benefits. I know for myself that, like all of us, I don't like to suffer, but I always realize the benefit of suffering. It's just a reminder that I'm not the enjoyer, I'm not the controller. It's a reminder of what life is for. So sometimes when things are difficult, we have to accept that, that's the gamble of taking a material body, is that things would be difficult or could be difficult. At least potentially that difficulty is always there. And, it's a price we pay for making a bad decision. And, we made the bad decision, but we made it millions of times. It's not just once. We keep wanting to come back. And so maybe for some of us, the only way we can get the lesson is we have to go through a certain degree of suffering. Maybe for some of us, less suffering. We're getting the lesson more easily. And for some of us, we need to suffer more to get the lesson. And so we have to see that. And I can relate my own experience that in areas where I'm more attached, I need more suffering to become detached. And in areas where I'm detached, I don't need suffering to be detached because I'm already detached. And in areas where I'm detached, whenever that attachment hits a threshold, Krishna slaps me. He goes, get down, boy. Don't go beyond this because this is going to kill you. So he slaps me before I get there. And it's a reminder that you're going there. I'm not going to let you go there. I love you too much, so I'm going to slap you every time you try to go there. So, we have these innate desires. It's that we know we shouldn't try to fulfill, and sometimes we do, and then, choop, and Krishna's saying, don't go there. You've already gone there in so many lifetimes, don't go there. And when you've tried to go there in this lifetime, I'm going to slap you. And then and you see that in other areas, everything goes well because you're detached, so Krishna doesn't have to slap you. Right? So I think we should see that way and try to see the positive. At least I've learned that, like sometimes I had this experience, I don't know, I'll relate it to you. But I was on the airplane and I was working with GarageBand and I was trying to create this music on GarageBand with loops that I could chant shlokas to. But I got carried away, so for like 2 hours I was like creating songs. And I don't know, this is very mystical. After I did that, I was reading. The main reason I have the iPad, so I have a new phone now. I used to use the iPad for broadcasts, but I don't need it for broadcasts. So basically the only time I use it is if my computer breaks down, and it was breaking down last month all the time. So I'll use it for my email. Or I'll use it on the plane to read, or at night I'll read. It's just got all the Prabhupada's books. So I was doing this music, I was kind of getting carried away, because I don't normally do music, and I thought, well, maybe it will be my airplane ritual, just to abide, to kind of not kill time, but, just not sit and get bored, although it's such a great place to read on airplanes. I really love it, read and write, because nobody can call me, and I don't know anybody on the planes, and no one's going to talk to me. So I was reading the Bhagavatam after I did the music. I was reading the Bhagavatam. It was time to get off the plane. How could you misplace it if it's in your hand? That's really difficult, considering that I've had electronic devices for years and not misplaced it. I mean, it's pretty big to misplace, right? Okay, and then, how is it that I don't notice I misplaced it till 5 minutes before my next flight? And then there's no time to go back to that gate because it's an hour and a half later. Now here's the icing on the cake. It's got to be sitting in the pocket or the seat. And how is it that after 10 days I get letters, we're still looking for it, we can't find it? It's like Krishna's going, okay, this is your weakness. You could waste your whole life making music, It's like, okay, don't go there, Mahatma. I'm taking away your iPad. All right, Krishna, that's the way I took it. Like, okay, you don't want me, I misused my iPad. You took it away, So, you misuse a relationship. Okay, you're useless. Take that person away from your life, etc. So, maybe you all have your own experience. But to me, when I looked for it and it wasn't there, I was like, that was my first thought. Oh, I blew it. Krishna didn't want me to do that. He just took it away. I mean, how could they not find it? How could a flight attendant not immediately see it, right? It's just like, how could the person next to me not see it? I mean, like, it was like, I'm still trying to figure out how could I not put that back in my bag. I can't imagine. It was like, just illusion came over me. Krishna said, nah, you're wasting your time with this. I have all these cool songs on it. I'm never going to hear, none of you are going to hear those songs. I can just lament all these songs I wrote. We could chant Gita to. You're never going to hear them. Oh, I'm just lament. No, Krishna, forget it. Don't do this. So that's how I took it. So I teach everybody to accept, so I have to accept also. I mean, someone may give me an iPad at some point in the future, but at this point I accept that Krishna said, well, for now. And it's unfortunate because 16-hour flight to China would be nice to have an iPad because I could read a lot. Krishna, if you give me another iPad, I promise I will not waste time making music. I will only read Bhagavatam. No, I know. I should get one of those readers, right? Where there's no GarageBand, I should get a little, right, Amazon reader or something with all Prabhupada's books. That's actually a good idea. Because, yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah. So, if we could learn to accept ourselves, and that would make really help us a lot. And the other thing is that I think the most difficult thing is that programming of the people that I've dealt with who've had the most serious difficulties, which I was not able to help, were both basically neglected by their parents and felt like kind of like we didn't really want you, you were an accident, and like we wish you weren't born kind of thing. So could you imagine? You have parents who basically tell you, you're kind of a burden to us and you weren't planned and it would have really been better if you weren't alive. How would you feel? If you didn't exist, actually we'd be happier. So that's when it really gets difficult. But and the devotees that I've seen in that situation, an extremely difficult time. And yeah, very difficult time. And people on that level, they really need help. And I've spoken to devotees who've gotten professional help, and sometimes in 1 or 2 sessions, it clears out amazingly. I've seen, really. So sometimes it doesn't go so deep. So, Jivana says Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Jivana. The life of Krishna, Jivana. The life of life. The life of all living things, Jivana. Yes. And then we had spoken in another class how if we allow these things to disturb us, then they get in the way of our devotional service. So then we're allowing a past situation to disturb our devotional service. So that's another thought, that I shouldn't allow anything to get in the way of my bhakti. So an emotional issue gets in the way of my bhakti. So that's important. Therefore I should do something about it, whatever is required. And another thought is that no matter how bad it is, you can do something about it. You can adjust the way you think about yourself. And if you, like some people, like most of us, many of us, on some level, we don't like ourselves because there's somebody better than us that we'd like to be like. So, Hey, look at me. See me? I have no hair. I don't like myself. I wish I had hair. So now I can take another birth, right? Because I wish I had hair. So I'm going to die thinking of hair. And I'll take another birth and I'll have beautiful hair, right? So, like, yeah. So I don't like myself because I don't have hair and I have to look in the mirror every day. No, actually, it was good. I became a devotee, shaved my head, and then Krishna said, well, you don't like to shave, so I'll just take it away. You don't have to shave. Okay, cool. So, you know, this is the positive side, right? I don't like myself, I'm not beautiful. No, it's good. Then all the girls won't be running after you. You can be a brahmachari, and you're like, it'll be easy, right? I'm big, fat, and ugly. Great. The girl, nobody's going to want to marry you, and you want to be a brahmachari anyway, so perfect. You know? I'm not that smart. Great. You'll never become proud that you're smarter than other people. No. So, you know, I think fundamentally in our culture, society, with all this peer pressure, you know, a lot of people just don't like themselves. And, you know, that's not good for Krishna consciousness, because you have to be comfortable in your own skin with what you can do for Krishna. So, thank you all for listening. I didn't actually have much to say today because to really get into this topic, I think requires more of a clinical approach to this problem. And I kind of, coming back to Mayapur, December 19th. I arrived December 18th. December 18th, I think I arrived at, maybe December 19th. I arrived Calcutta at 1:10 a.m. One of those beautiful flights, you know, you get to sleep on for a while. That I just love. And come to Mayapur, completely exhausted for a week. And, you know. Patton read Bhagavad Gita and studied Mahabharata. That explains it all. Why he was so great. Yes.
Einstein's IQ was 160.
Einstein's IQ was what?
160.
Einstein was 160. Hey, now I'm feeling good. I'm only 25 behind Einstein. And of course everyone knows in many ways I'm smarter than him because he didn't become a devotee and I did. And that means we're all smarter than Einstein. So let's celebrate. 1, 2, 3. Give yourself a big hand. You're smarter than Einstein. You became a devotee. Subhudi's trying to flatter me. Your music is making devotees. People attracting songs like Om Namo Bhagavate. That music was just an accident somehow or other. But, you know, do you have advice on non-devotee therapists? Something? No. Sukumari sent me an email because I have a disciple who's a mental health professional. So if you want help, she can help you. And then we don't have to go to a lot of devotees don't want to go to non-devotee therapists because they don't understand them. So, but you see, the thing is, it's like, it's not like we're relying on therapy, we're relying on Krishna. But sometimes you have to be reliant on therapy to become reliant on Krishna because things are so difficult. In your life at a particular point, it's difficult to be Krishna conscious. So if you sort that out, then you can get back to your Krishna consciousness. So the idea of therapy is not as like a crutch, a material crutch that you would feel like you're a failure for doing, but it may just sort things out for you so that you can go ahead with your devotional service. You know, let's say your room is dirty, you have to sort it out, right? Let's say your finances are messed up, you have to sort it out. Let's say your health is messed up, you have to sort it out. So once you sort it out, then you can go on peacefully into your devotional service. So sometimes on the mental or psychological level you have to sort it out, and then once it's sorted out, then you go forward. So if you have to do that, then don't feel like I'm crazy or this or that, there's something wrong. Sometimes it's just, you have to do it. So do it if you have to. Otherwise, these classes should be helping you. You know, I think the relevance of this class is, at least what I see and I understand is that we all have mental, emotional issues, but most of us have them to very small degrees that doesn't interfere with our normal functioning. Yeah, I'm envious of you and I wish I were better, but the next moment I forget that I feel that way and I just go on. It's not a big thing. But when it's more serious, it doesn't go away. I always feel that way. So, everybody kind of has the same problem, but when it intensifies, then you have to do something about it because it becomes an impediment to your bhakti. And seeing it as an impediment, you want to do something. You don't just want to let it go. I have an anger issue. I'm always getting angry. Well, that's an impediment to your bhakti. Do something about it. I get angry also. You get angry also. But he's always angry. So he has to deal with it. We have to deal with it, but through our japa, through our sadhana, we're overcoming it. But for him, it's more than just a spiritual defect. It's he was beat up as a kid, and now he's an angry person, and so he's got to deal with it. Otherwise, it's gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. So that's how we see it. Does that make sense? Oh. Someone says I answered their question, yeah. So let me just talk about this because I think this is a really important point and a good way. We're getting close to the end. We're going to give another class in about 2 hours, so if you're going to give Bhagavatam class here in Las Vegas, so if you're around in 2 hours, you can come. So let me just say again what I just said because I think it's important. My experience is that there's very few people that are like totally in love with themselves, totally self-confident, not envious of anybody else. And a lot of the people who are have the problem on the other side. They're just arrogant. That's why they're like that. I love myself, I'm the greatest, and I'm like, I'm just so smart, and So that's another problem, right? So, you want to get in the middle, where you're just like, yeah, this is what Krishna gave me, and this is who I am, and, you're better, and that's okay, and you're worse, and I'll try to help you, and let's be happy in Krishna consciousness. That's kind of the normal position, but within that normal position, there's a little arrogance, and there's a little bit of low self-esteem, sometimes a lack of self-confidence, sometimes overconfidence. I'm going to go out and distribute 100 books, and then you distribute 2. So Krishna just, pulled the rug from under you because you were so overly confident. Or sometimes you go, I don't know, I'm kind of afraid to approach people, and then you end up distributing 100 books. So, it works both ways. So that's kind of normal for most people. So, if you lack a little self-confidence or a little self-arrogance, you're just normal. But what we're talking about is extremes. And so if it goes to the extreme, then it starts to create a problem for you in your relationships and your normal functioning and your Krishna consciousness. That's when you may have to take some measure to deal with it outside of Krishna consciousness because it's having such a bad effect on you. Like if you have a bad marriage, it really can disturb your devotional service. It can just be like a constant problem over your head. And all day your mind's agitated, you come home to an agitated environment and you can't peacefully hear and chant. So you have to resolve that. You have to do something. So you might require counseling at that point. So we've tried everything, it doesn't work. Okay, let's go to marriage counseling. And there are good marriage counselors who can turn marriages around. And then the marriage becomes peaceful, and you're peaceful, and then you can do your Krishna consciousness. So, as we're saying, you can apply that to a marriage, you can apply that physically, and you can apply that to emotions, psychology, mental problems, and so forth. You want to take care of it. And so when devotees say, should we, do devotees see psychologists or this or that? And the answer is, if it's impeding your devotional service, if you've tried everything, you've talked to every Maharaj in ISKCON, you've read every book ever published, you've tried every practice, you've went to every japa retreat that ever was given in ISKCON, and you're still dealing with this issue, it probably means you're going to need some help that specifically focuses on this issue. So that's my answer to this question, perennial question, should we see a psychologist? And so generally, Krishna consciousness will be a solution. But in specific, should I see a marriage therapist if I'm about to get divorced, or I'm running around the house with a knife running after my wife and she's running around with a pot ready to throw it to me? Yeah, probably would be a good idea. What do you think? Either that or one of you are going to get thrown out the window. So, I think that's obvious, isn't it? That it hits a critical mass and you want to get help, right? That's just like, of course. So we get more mental about it when we're talking about psychological problems because we feel that Krishna consciousness should solve it and it would be a compromise. And in many cases, that's true. It should solve it, and maybe you're lacking in Krishna consciousness, and that's why it's not solved. But if you're not lacking in Krishna consciousness, and it's an issue which is deeply affecting your ability to either associate with the devotees, to be steady in Krishna consciousness, to be positive about Krishna consciousness, to not be critical and so forth, then you should deal with it, because now it's getting in the way of your bhakti. And if it's at a critical level, the only thing that may help you in that situation is professional help. So that seems pretty common sense, doesn't it? Logical? Yeah. But some devotees they don't understand it in that context. So it's not like we're promoting, that everybody go to a mental health professional. No, but in some rare cases it may be necessary, or just a few sessions in therapy could solve a problem. You didn't know how to solve it, and you realize, oh yeah, I'm doing this, and that's why my wife is running around the room with pots. Oh, so if I do this, she'll run around the room with hugs. Now she's running around with pots. And then you do that, and you go, yeah, I was so stupid. I needed to go have somebody tell me what I was doing, and now the problem is solved. Psychologists and chanting and reading and service has helped me solving my problems. Yeah, it's helped a lot of people. Yeah. Now, I will frankly admit that I had some problems that were solved by attending a workshop given by a non-devotee. And then after it happened, I thought, that is so weird. Because what he said was actually basically what we teach in Krishna consciousness. But it was elaborated on, and it was within a specific context that just kind of stood out and worked for me. I have some devotees now who are attending the 12-step program, and they're getting phenomenal results from it, because it's a very focused program. It's focused on one specific problem. So if you have a specific problem, let's say you want to give up smoking or alcohol, or you have sexual addiction problem, whatever it is, we would say Krishna consciousness is the solution, but sometimes you need to focus specifically on that problem in a program that's specifically geared to the issues that people have within the context of that particular problem. And this has been a process which has worked and been developed on and evolved over the years. 12-step program has evolved over the years. And so this is what they're good at, So like, you need brakes and tires. There are shops that just do brakes and tires. That's what they do. You need battery. There are places that just do batteries. So you have a particular problem sometimes. If you find that through Krishna consciousness, for whatever reason is, you just haven't been able to solve it, then you may require to go to an expert who can deal with it. I think it's simple. Is that okay? I'm trying to present it in a balanced, grounded way, so those who have doubts about getting help, I also have doubts. You should only do it when everything else is exhausted, and you have a problem that you haven't solved. Like, okay, I think you need to focus on this problem, perhaps with the help of a professional who is trained to help people deal with that problem. Now, some professionals, the way they may help you may not work. So we need more devotee professionals. So any of you who have desire to be counselors, therapists, psychologists, psychiatry, then you're given drugs. That's not really fun. And dealing with people who could be pretty bad, You may not want to do that. But if you have an inclination to go in this field, we need it. We need help. People need help. They're going to need more help as Kali Yuga progresses. And then we get people stable, and now they can do bhakti. You can chant nicely because you're peaceful. You have good relationships with devotees, so important. If you have some issues and you don't deal with them, sometimes it comes out in bad relationships. And that can be destructive to your bhakti. And sometimes just an emotional issue because of this or that, and you were treated this way when you're young, and you don't trust people, and this and that. And the therapist helps you realize, when this happened when you were 3 years old, this is why you're doing this now when you're 43. Oh my God, I didn't realize that. That's so true. And okay, let's work on this. And then it's gone, and all of a sudden your relationships are good again. Amazing, isn't it? The way this world is. So, I found important getting up early and going to sleep. Yeah, that's mode of goodness. So when you're in the mode of goodness, naturally a lot of these problems will go away. But some things are deeply rooted in, in belief systems and in emotional scars and so forth that the Mahamantra may not be able to touch, or wasn't designed to touch. So it's like the principle, if it helps your Krishna consciousness, do it. If it doesn't, don't. And I can't be the judge of whether it's going to help you or not. That's something you're going to have to decide. But I just wanted to lay that foundation, if something can help you in Krishna consciousness, and it's not something that's within Krishna consciousness, so you've exhausted all the Krishna conscious methods of helping, and you find, I've got this like addiction to this, and it's so persistent and it's so intense, I need professional help. Okay, go, get it. Now it's over. Go back and do your devotional service. At least that's what I'm seeing. As many of you know, I don't always just speak theoretically. I like to speak practically, because I think if we speak only theoretically, sometimes it doesn't relate to the practical. And then our practical experience and theoretical experience don't match. So I'm trying to match them up. Because if we don't match them, then we misunderstand the philosophy. That's my experience. Because Krishna consciousness is the solution to all problems. True. I have a problem. I've been a devotee for 50 years. Okay, why doesn't it match? Well, maybe I just solved this problem, and now it's my nature. I carry this problem into ISKCON. It's Krishna consciousness, solution to all problems. That problem wasn't within the context of all problems. This problem, Krishna, I got to deal with this. This is who I am, and this is what I brought, and I got to deal with this. You probably know devotees who are very, very personable, and you probably know devotees who are very shy, extroverted, and you try to say hello, and they kind of, hello. That's their nature, right? And they've been devotees for 40 years, and that's still their nature. Right? So some of us sometimes have a nature that could be an impediment to bhakti, and so we might need to work on it. And chanting wasn't designed to change that. So something like that. But I'll let you decide. We're going to go now. We're moving on to our next gig, and we're going to do kirtan and like that. Second kirtan going to be broadcast?
I believe so.
Where?
What? Krishna Lounge.
What's it? KrishnaLounge.com? No.
It's our Facebook page, Krishna Lounge Las Vegas.
Krishna Lounge Las Vegas on Facebook, and then we'll televise the kirtans and so on. Okay? Is that all right, everyone? You let us go now? I hope this class helped, and I think maybe we finished this series, but to finish this series means I have to think of the next series. Liliana says, I know one person who's in depression and all the time and has another mental emotional problem, but he said cannot practice bhakti yoga, and said that is bad for him. Yeah, hopefully he can get help, professional help. Worst case scenario, sometimes I'm not a psychotropic. I'm not a psychotropic drugs can be really horrible. But in some cases we've seen people who have chemical imbalances, if they don't take their drugs, they're impossible to deal with, and they're quite normal when they take their drugs. So if it's a chemical imbalance that, some people have chemical imbalances, then I want to take their drugs. And so that may be a problem. That's something to consider, it's like Prabhupada's mood is, if something's there and it helps, take it. So that's for you to investigate whether it's going to help or not. Now, pharmaceuticals is, every little problem people have, they give it a clinical name and then they have a drug to cure it. So, your friend bullied you and you came home crying to your mother, and now you've got a disease, it's bullying, and what is it? Being bullied, something blank blank disorder, and we've got a drug for it. So we're not going there, but there are certain chemical imbalances that, when maintained through some drugs, may be helpful for some people. My experience is that chanting intensifies the problems. Hare Krishna. Well, then get rid of the problems, and then chanting will intensify everything that's good. Yeah, chanting can intensify, but sometimes it intensifies it before it gets rid of it. Some devotees feel guilty of getting outside help for mental problems, and that they are not able to solve problems by spiritual ways. Yeah, that's understandable. But then we have to be practical. So if it's like, I feel guilty bringing my car into a car mechanic because I studied car mechanics when I went to high school. So I should be able to fix it, but I can't. So I have two choices. Car doesn't run, or I take it and get it fixed. So I understand that, but we have to be practical. And just, Prabhupada used to say, do the needful. So you have to decide if it's needful or not. But if it's handicapping your devotional service, I would say it's needful. And I wouldn't have a bad feeling about it. And I was dealing with some devotees, not dealing with them, but they were writing me about some problems they had, and they were abused as children. And one devotee wrote me and said in one session the problem was solved, because it wasn't that bad for her, but she couldn't get over it on her own. And in one session, he's expert, the psychologist, so he understood it and told her how to deal with it, and she wrote me back and said, I'm fine now. I was surprised. So that was a good psychologist. We need more devotee psychologists, so therefore you can when you have problems, you can go to devotees, or your friends have problems, they can go to devotees. Then I don't think anyone would be mental about going to a mental health. Prabhupada, I'm mental about going to a mental health. Well, that's why you need to go, because you're so mental. So we wouldn't be so mental about going to a mental health professional if all the mental health professionals we could go to were devotees. Then we would feel like, that's Krishna conscious. So I'm encouraging all of you, or any of you who have inclination to go into the mental health professional, psychology, counseling, therapy, do it, because we need you. And that's why I'm doing it. I shouldn't have to be doing this, right? I should just be quoting shlokas. But I'm doing this because nobody's doing it. We don't have people doing it, giving class. So I'm like learning all this, studying it, analyzing. It's my nature to do it, but I'm doing it because someone has to do it, right? Isn't it? So if you want to learn to be a coach, a therapist, do it, because we need you. Okay, we have to go. Hare Krishna. We'll see you soon. All glories to Prabhupada.